Hello, and welcome to Shortcut Up CNC. Today we're going to talk about DXF imports, DXF files. Here we have a set of sheets with vectors. There's a total of 9 sheets here with different types of vectors assigned to each sheet. These were imported using the DXF batch processor, which was originally created by Vectric, which I have modified with a new sheet management and a button that shows the files of the directory that you're going to be importing with the DXF batch processor. So let's get started with this and look at the various types of variables involved. So let's close this and we'll create a new job. We're going to use all the default settings I have here. It's a 96 by 48 half-inch sheet, standard sheet here in the US. Top of the surface and the lower left-hand corner. It's important that you remember how these settings were set up for your DXF files, because as your toolpaths have to be set up a certain way, and certain settings, especially these settings, when you go to the CNC machine, the same thing applies here when you're creating DXF files for importing. They have to be the same way, or else they'll be scattered about in the drawing area and you'll have to reset everything. So it's important to remember how this was set up when you go to import your DXF files. We create one this way. You want to create it the same way when you import it. Okay, so we're going to make a bunch of circles. And we're going to use the array copy. I'm going to have 2 rows, and I think 4 with a 1-inch gap in each direction. And that looks fairly decent. We just need to get it centered on the sheet. So we say Control A on our keyboard. That keeps us from having to use the box to highlight the vectors. And then you just click on this box here to center. And there is a keyboard feature for centering too. I just don't remember what that is right offhand. I could always go to my gadget and find out what it is by going to the hotkeys, centering. Let's see. Control A, select all vectors. Okay, then centering groups. Well, anyway, I'd have to search this thing to find it. So we'll just close and get out. Now we've got our vectors centered, and we also want to create a layer for those circles, and we're going to call it the cutout, because you're only going to be probably a profile. You're not going to want to cut it inside and have a bunch of holes in this sheet, unless, of course, that's what you want. But anyway, we call it cutout. And now we're ready to save the DXF file. And I go to my desktop, get the test DXFs. And I want to call this sheet 1. DXF. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my design and I'm going to put a bunch of stars in the center of each one of these circles. Rather than using the array copy, I can just use the centering feature that they have here with the little indicator of your mouse. You see it changes. That way you know it's centered. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight each one of the stars by clicking on the first one, hold the shift key down on the keyboard, and highlight each one of them. I'm going to create a layer next for the stars. Add new layer, call it stars. Now you save the DXF file. Excuse me. And we'll call it sheet 2. About to lose my voice here, I guess. All right, so now we have that as sheet 2, and we're going to delete the cutout layer and leave just the stars visible. Well, okay, cutout layer, make it visible by itself. There we go. Oh, wait a minute now. Okay, the stars need to be moved because they were on the cutout layer. So you highlight all the stars and you right click and you move to layer. Yeah, see it's checked. They're originally on the cutout layer. Now we're going to move them to the stars. See, now it's gone. Now if I click it on, the stars are on. So there's another important thing you want to remember. You want to move them to that layer after you created the layer, because what you did is you created them on the cutout. I created them on the cutout layer. So you got to watch what you're doing. Here's an indicator that tells you exactly what layer you're on. And also in bold, that tells you the active layer. If I switch over here now, it's the active layer is the stars. So now we've got that. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of the cutout layer. So I'm going to highlight that being the active layer and delete this. And I do want to get rid of its data, which is the vectors. So now I have just the stars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new sheet of just the stars. So we go to File, Export, DXF, and we'll call it sheet 3. All right, now I can go delete those, go to my design, and we're going to create a bunch of squares. And if I remember correctly, my setup, close this, go to the array copy. I think it's 7, no, it's 3 rows, and 7 with 1-inch gap in between them. Let's take a look at that. That's good enough. As you can see, all it needs to be done is to center it. So I say Control A on the keyboard and I center it to the sheet. Now I can save that as a DXF file. Change this to 4. Now I got all 4 of my sheets that I wanted. You could create more. You can create as many as you want, as long as you got enough memory on your computer to hold it all. But anyway, let's close the job. And now we're going to use the DXF batch processors that's been modified. In fact, let me show you the original to start with. and show you how it laid out things. Here's layout control. Here's where it creates a new job sheet. No button for showing what you're seeing, what you're importing. So we'll choose that directory that we made, which is our test DXFs. I have no idea, I don't remember how many was in there, but we know it was 4. We don't need to process subdirectories. I don't need a log file. The log file will actually be put in your folder where you've got your DXF files. And this is how it lays them out in the drawing area of one sheet, your job. 3 in a row. The gap between is 5 inches according to this. In fact, we'll go ahead and just leave the defaults and use those. And you'll see how it says no job loaded. That's true. We do not have a job loaded. And there's all 4 sets of DXF files. Not necessarily laid out on sheets. It's all in one drawing area. You have to assign sheets to each one of your DXF files. Okay, so let's close this and you'll see the new modified gadget that I've worked on, which is very similar. It's just a few changes. Added a little color, add a little button showing what's in the directory. If we go choose this and we choose the DXF files, there's no subdirectory, so I can uncheck that. And I check the file list, and this tells you where they came from, tells you how many are in the directory, and there's the 4 sheets listed. You close that. If you do not have a job set up, which we do not have one here, you can use the default settings, or if the default settings do not match your DXF files, which you may have to check beforehand because you may not remember what they are, they have to match, just like when you do things with your CNC versus the design. The CNC must match the design file. If they do not match, you're going to have problems. Same thing here. If it does not match, you will end up fixing things. Or you just go back and redo it and fix it in here. So we say okay to this, and you watch these little bars here, they move around, and they're, in fact, when you got a bunch of files, it keeps bouncing back and forth. But being we only had 4 files, it didn't move much. It processed it pretty quickly. It tells you how many files. You say okay to that. And there we have all 4 sheets that we originally created on the sheet, individual sheets. There's our stars, there's our individual circles, there's our squares, and there's our circles and stars together. And if you go over here to layers, there's our 2 layers, the cutout layer and the stars layer. If I turn this off, you'll watch the drawing area. I click on stars, the only stars, whoop, it brought in the squares too. We didn't create a vector for, a layer for the squares. So see there, you got to be careful. Now you can create one here. If you haven't created one, it's no big deal. You can go ahead and add a new layer, call it squares, and then you highlight the squares to move them. Okay, the new layer, See, they're on the stars. They were originally created on the stars layer. So now we moved them to the squares layer. Now we're all set. In fact, let's make this look the same. Put the caps on. SQUARES. Whoops, what the heck was that? RES. There we go. Fingers are old. 69 when climbing. Okay, well, anyway, there you have it, folks. How to set up DXF files and using the DXF batch processor to import those DXF files. You also want to remember that the centering and your job setup information needs to be the same when you do the import. Thank you for watching Shark Cut Up CNC.